Are parachute payments killing English football? In the last decade, promotion from the Championship has started to look less like an open race and more like a recurring cycle. Relegated clubs frequently return at the first attempt. Established second-tier sides overspend trying to keep up. Some collapse under the pressure. Meanwhile, the financial gap between the Premier League and the rest of the pyramid continues to widen in England. At the centre of this pattern is a policy that rarely dominates headlines but quietly shapes competitive balance: parachute payments. Introduced to protect relegated clubs from financial shock, they now distribute tens of millions of pounds to teams dropping out of the richest league in the world. The question is no longer just whether they provide stability, it's whether at their current scale they are distorting competition in ways that the pyramid cannot absorb. Before we get into this, if you enjoy long-form football analysis that focuses on structure, incentives and the money behind the game, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the Boardroom YouTube channel. To understand whether parachute payments are harming English football, we need to examine why they were created, how large the financial gap has become, how that gap changes behaviour in the Championship, and what realistic reforms could actually look like. But why do they actually exist? Well, parachute payments were introduced in 2006 in response to a structural imbalance created by the Premier League's accelerating broadcast revenues. Relegation from the top flight involves one of the steepest revenue drops in global sport. According to Deloitte's annual review of football finance, the difference between central Premier League distributions and Championship solidarity payments can exceed £90 million in a single season. That drop happens immediately. The difficulty is that costs do not fall at the same speed as revenue. Player contracts are often signed over multiple years and negotiated in the context of Premier League income. Wage bills, agent fees, infrastructure commitments and commercial expectations are structured around top flight participation. When relegation occurs, those obligations remain legally binding. Prior to the expansion of parachute payments, several relegated clubs faced severe financial strain, including forced sales and mounting debt. The current structure reflects the growth of broadcast income following the landmark domestic and international rights deal agreed in the mid-2010s. Relegated clubs now receive approximately 55% of an equal share of Premier League broadcasting revenue in their first year after relegation. In practice, this can total between £80 and £100 million across 3 seasons approximately. The Premier League has consistently defended this system as necessary to prevent insolvency and protect the long-term sustainability of clubs exiting the division. The original rationale was stability. However, once the Premier League's revenues expanded dramatically, the stabilisation mechanism became financially significant relative to the Championship. But in order to properly understand and evaluate parachute payments and their context within the English football pyramid, we have to look at it through 4 key areas. Number 1 is the money gap. To understand why parachute payments are controversial, the scale of the revenue gap must be considered. In recent seasons, the club finishing bottom of the Premier League has earned over £100 million in central distributions. A typical Championship club without parachute payments receives under £10 million in central funding, supplemented by matchday and commercial income that is modest by comparison. When parachute payments are added, the difference in starting conditions becomes clear. A relegated club can begin its Championship campaign with £40 to £50 million in guaranteed central revenue in year 1. According to reports by the Financial Times and analysis cited by the EFL in redistribution negotiations, this can represent 4 to 5 times the central income of many of their competitors. The Premier League emphasises that overall solidarity payments to EFL clubs have increased significantly in recent years, reaching hundreds of millions collectively. However, the EFL's position has been that the gap between divisions has widened structurally, and that parachute payments intensify the imbalance within the Championship itself. The debate is therefore not about whether the Premier League generates more money, that is undisputed. The question is whether concentrating transitional funds among a small number of relegated clubs alters the competitive landscape in the second tier. We wanted to give a big thank you to today's video sponsor, Champions Travel. Champions Travel is an official ticketing partner of the biggest clubs in European football. Irish owned and operated, Champions Travel is an official agent to over half of the teams in the Premier League, including Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal. Plus European giants like FC Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Juventus and more. Trusted by thousands of fans, Champions Travel sort your ticket, hospitality and hotel. Travel with trust, travel with passion, travel with champions. The second area we're going to look at is competitive distortion. The argument that parachute payments distort competition rests on patterns rather than absolutes. They do not guarantee promotion, but statistical trends show that recently relegated clubs are frequently represented among promoted teams. Analysis referenced during parliamentary discussions in England surrounding the Football Governance Bill highlighted that a substantial portion of promoted Championship sides in recent seasons had been receiving parachute payments. This has contributed to the rise of the so-called yo-yo clubs, teams that move repeatedly between divisions. Their financial insulation allows them to retain players longer, avoid distressed sales, and reinvest more quickly. While not every parachute recipient returns immediately, the reduced financial volatility changes the risk profile of relegation. The Premier League disputes the characterisation of structural distortion, arguing that sporting merit still determines outcomes and that some parachute-funded clubs underperform. That is true in individual cases. However, economic insulation lowers downside risk and provides greater resilience across a multi-season horizon. In competitive market, resilience compounds. The distortion argument therefore centres on probability and starting position rather than certainty. Over time, even marginal financial advantages can shape aggregate outcomes. Number 3 is the Championship arms race. The financial value of promotion to the Premier League has been estimated by Deloitte at more than £150 million when future broadcasting and commercial growth are considered. That prize creates intense incentives. When some clubs enter the Championship with £40 to £50 million in guaranteed support, others must decide whether to match spending or accept competitive limitations. Data from Deloitte shows that Championship wage to revenue ratios have at times exceeded 100%, meaning clubs collectively spend more on wages than that they generate in revenue. This reflects the logic of gambling for promotion. Derby County's administration in 2021 and Reading's financial breaches were influenced by ownership decisions and governance failures, but they occurred within a division where the reward for promotion is transformative and the margin for error is thin. Parachute payments do not directly cause financial mismanagement, but they operate within a structure where uneven revenue distribution intensifies competitive pressure. Clubs without insulation may overextend in order to compete, particularly when rivals possess guaranteed income streams that reduce their exposure to risk. In this environment, volatility becomes a feature of the system rather than an exception. Lastly is power and politics. The persistence of parachute payments reflects governance realities. The Premier League is controlled by its member clubs, which vote on distribution mechanisms. From an ownership perspective, parachute payments reduce relegation risk and protect asset value. Lower downside volatility makes investment in player contracts more predictable. The EFL, representing 72 clubs, has consistently argued for greater redistribution. Negotiations over a revised financial statement have stalled repeatedly, with both sides presenting competing claims about fairness and sustainability. The UK government's 2023 Football Governance White Paper explicitly identified financial imbalance between divisions as a structural issue and proposed the creation of an independent regulator with backstop powers to intervene. The UK government's 2023 Football Governance White Paper explicitly identified financial imbalance between divisions as a structural issue and proposed the creation of an independent regulator with backstop powers to intervene if revenue sharing agreements fail. The Premier League maintains that its global success underpins the entire pyramid and that commercial autonomy is central to maintaining competitiveness internationally. The EFL argues that the financial asymmetry threatens long-term health. Parachute payments sit at the interest, and as we've said, it is also accurate that not all parachute recipients achieve promotion. Some struggle despite financial advantage, indicating that competitive outcomes are influenced by management, quality and recruitment decisions as well as the revenue levels. From this perspective, parachute payments function as insurance in a revenue environment where the Premier League's commercial scale is unlikely to shrink. The counter-argument suggests that eliminating them without broader redistribution reform could create instability without solving any of the imbalance. The issue then is not whether parachute payments create stability as we mentioned at the start of the video, it is whether the stability they provide to a small group creates secondary instability everywhere else in the system. So what's the regulatory future of parachute payments and what can actually be done? But the proposed independent football regulator represents the most credible pathway to structural adjustment. As we've mentioned, under the Football Governance Bill, the regulator would have the authority to intervene in revenue distribution if negotiations between the Premier League and EFL fail. This introduces for the first time a credible external lever in redistribution discussions. Possible reforms could also include flattening the parachute structure while increasing baseline solidarity payments across the Championship, thereby reducing the gap between relegated and non-relegated clubs. Another option is tighter cost controls tied to revenue sustainability, limiting the extent to which clubs can gamble on promotion. Enhanced revenue sharing formulas that distribute a greater proportion of central funds evenly rather than conditionally could also moderate imbalance. According to the EFL, a rebalanced distribution model would strengthen long-term sustainability. The Premier League has cautioned that excessive redistribution could undermine international competitiveness. Any reform must therefore balance three competing objectives: stability for relegated clubs, competitive integrity in the Championship, and the Premier League's global position. So in conclusion, the debate is no longer about whether parachute payments should exist in principle. It is about their scale, structure and integration within a broader settlement that protects both stability and competitive mobility. And English football is not facing existential collapse, but its internal financial architecture is under scrutiny. Adjustments are possible, and the coming regulatory cycle may determine whether the pyramid becomes more balanced or further stratified in the decade ahead. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Boardroom YouTube channel for weekly football business content. Thanks for watching.